Wait, what if the silence between you and them is not the end of the story? What if they've already typed the message, stared at your name, written something, and then deleted it? And what if the reason they haven't spoken yet has nothing to do with not caring? Because sometimes the person who says nothing is the person fighting the loudest conversation inside their own mind. They miss you. They think about reaching out. They imagine what would happen if they finally told you the truth. But something keeps stopping them, and that something may be closer to breaking than you realize. So if you've been wondering, when will they finally speak to me? Just pause for a second. Because there are signs that communication is approaching, and one of them may already be happening in your life. You probably know exactly who this message is about. You don't need a name. You don't need a photograph. The moment you heard this, someone appeared in your mind. Maybe you haven't spoken in days. Maybe it's been weeks, maybe months. Or maybe you're technically still connected, but the conversations have become cold, distant, and strangely incomplete. There's something unsaid between you, something unfinished. And that's what makes the silence so difficult. Because silence is easy when you don't care. But when you care deeply, silence becomes a language of its own. You start noticing everything. The time they were online, the fact that they watched something you posted, the sudden appearance of their name, a song that reminds you of them, a dream that feels unusually real, a memory appearing out of nowhere. And you wonder, why now? Maybe because your emotional connection hasn't completely disappeared. Maybe because something inside you still feels unresolved. But here's where things become interesting. There may be a reason they're holding back. And once you understand it, their silence may look completely different. The first thing you need to understand is this. People don't always stay silent because they have nothing to say. Sometimes they stay silent because they have too much to say. They don't know where to begin. They don't know how you'll react. They don't know whether you'll welcome them or shut the door completely. And if they hurt you before, this becomes even more complicated. Because somewhere inside them is a question, do I still have the right to approach them? That's a painful question, especially when they know their own actions created the distance. Maybe they said something they regret. Maybe they disappeared when you needed them. Maybe they chose pride over honesty. Maybe they made you feel like you weren't important, when secretly, you mattered far more than they admitted. And now, they have to face the consequences of that silence. This is why they may be watching from a distance. Not necessarily because they want to play games, but because they're trying to understand you. Are you angry? Have you moved on? Would you respond? Would you forgive them? Would you even care if they came back? These questions can keep someone trapped in hesitation. And here's something you may not realize. Your silence may be affecting them too. You may think you're the only one wondering. You're not. They may be wondering why you aren't reaching out. They may have expected you to break first. Maybe they thought eventually you'd send a message. Maybe they assumed you would give them another opportunity, but you didn't. And that changed something, because for the first time, they had to sit with their own feelings, no distraction, no easy access to you, no reassurance that you were still waiting, just silence. And silence can reveal what noise was hiding. Now here's the sign I want you to pay attention to. Their energy may start becoming inconsistent. They may appear, then disappear. They may suddenly interact with something connected to you, then retreat again. They may find small reasons to come close without actually saying what they want, a reaction, a view, a subtle question, a mutual friend mentioning them, a strange coincidence. Or perhaps they suddenly start showing up in places where they know you might be. Don't automatically assume every coincidence means something supernatural, but pay attention to patterns. Because when someone is emotionally conflicted, their behavior often becomes inconsistent before their communication becomes direct. They move closer, then fear takes over. They remember what happened, then pride returns. They miss you, then convince themselves they shouldn't. They want to speak, then their ego whispers, don't. And this internal battle can continue for longer than you would expect, until something finally changes. The deeper spiritual lesson here may actually be about timing. Not every reunion happens when you want it. Sometimes two people need distance before they can understand what the connection meant. Think about it. If they had returned immediately, would anything really have changed? Would they have understood your value? Would they have taken responsibility? Would they have learned what your absence feels like? Maybe not. Sometimes distance isn't punishment, it's revelation. It gives people enough space to see what they couldn't see while they had easy access to each other. And that's why their return may happen only after they reach a certain emotional realization. Not when they're simply lonely, not when they're bored, not when they need attention, but when they finally understand, I don't want to lose this person. That realization changes everything. There may also be something happening inside you. You've been changing. Maybe you don't check your phone as often anymore. Maybe you aren't waiting for the notification like you once did. Maybe you're slowly accepting that your life has to continue with or without their message. And ironically, that may be exactly when communication becomes possible, because you've stopped trying to control the outcome. You're not forcing the door open. You're not chasing. You're not begging the universe for proof. You're simply living. And there is something powerful about that. When you stop emotionally standing at the door, you finally have space to hear whether someone is actually knocking. Now listen carefully. When they finally speak to you, it may not begin with a dramatic confession. Don't expect them to suddenly send 5 paragraphs explaining everything. It might start very simply. Hey, how have you been? I was thinking about you. Something reminded me of you. Or even a completely ordinary question. But don't judge the entire conversation by the first sentence. Sometimes people use ordinary words to approach extraordinary emotions. They may be testing the waters, trying to see whether you're receptive, trying to understand whether they still have a place in your world. And this is where you need to stay grounded. Don't immediately give them everything you've been holding inside. Listen, observe, let them reveal themselves, because their first message isn't the answer. Their behavior after the message is. If they truly want to reconnect, you won't have to carry the entire conversation. They'll participate, they'll ask questions, they'll remember details, they'll try to repair what was damaged, and most importantly, they'll become clearer, not more confusing. That's the difference. A person who genuinely wants to return doesn't just reopen communication. They create emotional safety around it. They don't make you wonder every night, where do I stand? They begin showing you. And maybe you're asking, when exactly will they speak? You want a date, a time, a specific moment. But perhaps the more important question isn't, when will they speak? It's, what will they say when they finally do? Because the message you've been waiting for may not be the message you imagined. They may admit they were wrong. They may tell you they missed you. They may confess they were afraid. They may finally explain why they disappeared. Or they may simply ask for another chance. And if that happens, you get to decide. You don't owe anyone immediate access to your heart simply because they finally found the courage to speak. Remember that. Their return is their choice. Your response is yours. And this is where your emotional turning point begins. Maybe you've spent too much time thinking their silence meant you weren't enough. Maybe you thought, if they loved me, they would have stayed. But human emotions aren't always that simple. People can love someone and still be emotionally immature. They can care and still run. They can miss you and still be afraid. They can regret what they did and still not know how to fix it. None of that excuses harmful behavior. But understanding it can help you stop making their silence a measurement of your worth. Their inability to communicate was never proof that you weren't worth communicating with. Their fear was never evidence that you were unlovable. Their hesitation was never a verdict on your value. So if you're waiting for them to speak, don't put your entire life on pause. Please don't. Keep living, keep growing, keep laughing, keep meeting people, keep creating, keep becoming the version of yourself that no longer needs another person's message to feel complete. Because if they return, you want to meet them as someone who has grown, not someone who has been waiting in the same emotional room for months. And if they don't return, you still win something precious. You get yourself back. But here's the beautiful possibility. Sometimes when two people genuinely still have something unresolved between them, life creates a moment, a random message, a chance encounter, a mutual connection, a memory, a song, a late night thought that becomes a late night text, and suddenly the silence breaks. Not because you forced it, not because you chased them, but because the emotional distance finally became heavier than the fear of speaking. And that's when their name may appear on your screen. You may stare at it, your heart may race, you may not know whether to smile or protect yourself. And before you answer, breathe. Just pause for a second. Remember everything you've learned during the silence. Then ask yourself one question. Does this conversation bring me closer to peace or pull me back into confusion? That question can save you from repeating an old chapter. Maybe they will speak soon. Maybe the message comes unexpectedly. Maybe it begins with just 2 words. Hey you. And behind those 2 words, there may be an entire story they've been too afraid to tell you. But don't chase the message. Let it arrive naturally. And when it does, don't listen only to what they say. Listen to what they avoid. Watch what they do. Feel how your body responds. Because sometimes your heart knows the difference between genuine reconciliation and temporary nostalgia. And if they truly are meant to return, you won't need to destroy your peace to make it happen. The right conversation will meet you where you are. The right explanation won't require you to beg. The right connection won't punish you for having boundaries. And the right person will understand that speaking to you again is not the same as having access to you again. They will earn that access slowly, honestly, through consistency. So tonight, if their name crosses your mind again, don't immediately reach for your phone. Don't send the message you've written 100 times. Don't chase an answer from someone who isn't ready to give one. Take a breath, look at how far you've come, and tell yourself, if they have something genuine to say, they know where to find me. That's not arrogance, that's peace, that's self-respect. That's releasing control without releasing hope. And maybe the silence you've been fearing isn't permanent. Maybe it's simply the space between two chapters. Maybe they're gathering courage. Maybe they're confronting regret. Maybe they're finally understanding what your absence means. Maybe they're realizing that some people aren't easily replaced, and maybe the next time you see their name on your screen, you'll understand why it took so long. Not because you weren't worthy of their words, but because they needed time to become honest enough to speak them. Until then, don't wait by the door. Live, love yourself, keep moving. And if they come, let them come with truth. Not breadcrumbs, not confusion, not temporary attention. Truth. Because you deserve a conversation that doesn't leave you questioning everything afterward. You deserve words backed by action. And you deserve a love that doesn't disappear the moment things become real. If you believe someone has been silently thinking about speaking to you, tell me in the comments. I am ready for the truth. And if this message found you at exactly the right moment, subscribe to the channel. Stay connected. Because sometimes the message you're waiting for isn't just coming from another person. Sometimes it's coming from life itself. And perhaps the greatest thing you're about to hear isn't their voice. It's your own heart finally saying, I don't need to chase anyone who truly wants to find me. And when they finally speak, listen carefully. Because sometimes the first words are small, but behind them is everything they were too afraid to say.